Okay. I was outside recording and it started to get like super hot and I was like literally sweating through my shirt and it was starting to get gross. And I was in my head super close to complaining. And then I just had to remember the whole reason I flew out to Thailand was because it's freezing where I live in Indiana. There's snow on the ground and I get super depressed when it's like winter and super dreary and cloudy. And so I decided to come here. And that made all of the complaints that were in my head just totally disappear. Now I moved in where it's a lot cooler. I feel a lot better. And I don't know why I felt to share that, but I just have a feeling that there's someone who's watching this that is complaining about something that they don't need to be complaining about. And I think that humanity finds that often. We find reasons to be discontent with our current situation, even if we are quote unquote living the dream. So if that's you, take a step back, close your eyes, take a deep breath, realize everything is fine, and let's go. Okay, so let's go ahead and establish data systems for your company. And I have thought about a lot of different ways to do that. I was going to pull open a PPC campaign, a Facebook campaign, kind of show you the data there. And then I realized that doesn't really apply to every business. So from high level, what are the steps and how do I do this in my head? And I figured that would be more valuable to teach you right now. So here are my steps. Here's how I establish a data system. First, I look at where I'm at, and then I look at the KPI, and I ask myself, what are the quantitative, the math, the data that I need to answer my KPI? And I dig in and go through an entire workflow just to solve just those math points. And all of the other data that's out there, I totally ignore it. And I'm singularly focused on just solving the data points to solve the one KPI. So let me do this with you with a super simple example. Let's say I'm running a business that I'm operating from my cell phone. And I have a KPI now, because I'm going through this process, where I want to be able to have an 80% closing ratio from inbound sales calls. Okay, I'm running from my cell phone. I want to have 80% closing ratio from inbound sales calls. What are the data points that I need to calculate whether or not I'm achieving that goal? Okay, I need to know the percentage of inbound. Okay, here's the data points I need. I need to know how many new inbound sales calls there are. I need to be able to subtract all of the ones that aren't qualified. And then I need to be able to know of those, how many did I close? And then I take the number that I closed divided by the qualified inbound sales calls, and I get that ratio to determine, is it above 80% or lower than 80%? Okay, now that I know that I need those three things, how do I get there from using a cell phone? Let's play this game together. I'm doing it in my head. I might mess up. It's okay. But this is how the collaboration works. You're going to share with me or someone else what your goal is, and you're going to do your best to write it out. We're going to meet together and we're going to go through it, and we're going to try to figure out how to solve those data points as quickly, efficiently, effectively, automatically, as close to live, as transparent, as cost effective as possible. So let's try to do that with a cell phone. Now the question is, with my cell phone, am I able to track how many inbound sales calls there are automatically? No, I would manually have to do that. Okay, so let's say I get 100 calls, a bunch of them are personal. I can go in and I can track. I can do that. I can track how many are new sales calls. And then of that, I can go ahead and cross out all of the ones that aren't qualified. Maybe it's a solicitor that says they're a new customer. Maybe it's someone pitching something that says they're a new customer, whatever. I can go ahead and subtract it, or just delete them. And then I can do the math. Okay, I had 100 new calls. 20 of them were new customers. Of those, 10 of them weren't really new customers. I closed 5 of them. Okay, that's a 50% ratio. So the answer is I can do it from my cell phone. Is that the method that I want? For me as a business owner, no, it's not. So what I need to do is I need to dive into this particular infrastructure of this component and figure out, is there a better way for me to do this? And I know that there is. So I'm going to go online, I'm going to think through my head, and I'm going to map out a workflow of how I would want this to work. Here's how I would want it to work. I would want some way to automatically have a computer or a software tell me how, like what the percent, like how many inbound sales calls they are automatically without me having to do anything. And then I would want a super, super easy way when those calls come in to just be able to tag qualified or not. And then have the math automatically tell me of the ones that are qualified. I can pull a report that tells me the volume for the day. And then I'd want a system, some sort of CRM that I can pull a report on that will tell me how many of those inbound sales calls I actually closed. So essentially, I want an automatic way for a system to tell me what an inbound sale is, a way to tag whether or not they're qualified, and a way to click and say, okay, I sold them or not, and then a report that I can pull that tells me how many I actually pulled. And then I can take that data, divide by the number to determine my ratio. So how would I do that? Here's how I would do it. I would first not use my cell phone. I look, drop it. I look for some sort of phone system that can differentiate the types of calls. And that's done through a dial plan or an auto dialer, which is why when you call a company, you might have an automated system that says, if you're a new customer, push 1. If you're an existing customer, push 2. Why do they do that? Well, the reason they do that is because they're trying to track the number of current customer calls. They're trying to track the number of new customer calls. It can get a little too lengthy sometimes. And there are some auto dialers that are just ridiculous, where you're just pushing 0. Let me talk to a customer, you know? So personally, I just want the data that I want to track. I just want the new customer data. So I'm going to have a super simple auto dialer. If you're a new customer, push this button. If you're not, you push this button or stay on the line. They push that button. Okay. Then I want some sort of CRM where once that call comes in, I can log it and I can tag that call that I can say, this call either was a real sales call or it wasn't a real sales call. And if I tag that it wasn't, it's going to not include that on the report. It's just going to literally take that, throw it out of the report, and it's just going to take the qualified ones. And then from there, can I then do an additional tag and select whether or not I sold it or not? That is a super, super simple method of how I would do that. Now let's get granular. Let's actually dive in and do it. No, I'm just kidding. Let's not do it. But what I would do is I would research a phone system that can provide that for me. And I would interview a phone system. I figure out how much it costs. I determine whether or not whether I can do all of those steps for one system or whether I need a phone system and a separate CRM. That's the process that's going to be me and you, right? I'm not going to do that with you because that would be super boring, may not be applicable to your business. Maybe you already have that and you're stuck on another data system. But that is the simplest way for me to explain how I do it. What are the data points that I need? Where am I at right now? And what's the simplest workflow that I can figure out to automate that and make it cost effective? And then we collaborate and we go and do it. So I apologize that I'm not giving you, here's a concrete data system. I kind of feel bad about it, but your business is so different than every other business and there are a lot of data systems that we need to go over. And this is probably the thing that you need to spend the most time one-on-one with me or someone else in the company. So that said, go ahead and schedule multiple meetings with me or someone else, and let's start digging through this, because this is the point. This is the hinge point. Once you get these data systems, everything else will start falling in place. And I'm excited for that for you. So let's go ahead and go get it done.